Commander Jake Morrison stood alone on the bridge of the Endeavour. The stars stretched out before him through the wide viewing window, but he barely saw them anymore. 3 years, in deep space, had worn him down to nothing but duty and routine. He gave orders. His crew followed them. That was all there was. The ship hummed around him with its usual sounds. Machines working, air flowing through vents, footsteps in distant corridors. Jake heard it all, but felt nothing. He had stopped feeling 6 months ago when the hull breach happened. 12 people died that day. 12 names he read every morning on the memorial wall. 12 weights pressing down on his chest until he could barely breathe. Lieutenant Ryan Parker walked onto the bridge carrying a data pad. He glanced at Jake and frowned slightly. Ryan had been doing that a lot lately, looking at Jake like he was worried about something but never saying what it was. "Commander, the supply inventory is complete," Ryan said. "But we have a problem." Jake turned from the window. His face showed nothing. "Report. Security found something in Cargo Bay 3. Someone has been living there. There are food wrappers, water containers, and signs of a sleeping area." Jake felt a flicker of something. Anger, maybe. Or just frustration. "A stowaway? How long? We don't know yet. Months, possibly. The area is rarely checked. Take me there." They walked through the ship's corridors in silence. Crew members they passed straightened up and saluted. Jake nodded but never stopped walking. He never stopped for anything anymore. Stopping meant thinking. Thinking meant remembering. Remembering hurt too much. Cargo Bay 3 was cold and dark except for the emergency lights. 2 security officers stood near a stack of supply crates. Between the crates, pressed against the wall like a trapped animal, sat a young girl. She looked about 14 years old. Her clothes were dirty and too big for her thin frame. Her dark hair hung in tangles around her face. But what caught Jake's attention was her eyes. They were wide and scared, but also defiant. She held something clutched tight against her chest. "What's your name?" Jake asked. His voice came out harder than he meant it to. The girl didn't answer. She just stared at him and held the object tighter. Ryan stepped forward. "We checked the passenger manifest. She's Sophie Blake. Her parents were civilian engineers. They both died in the hull breach 6 months ago." Jake felt something cold spread through his stomach. 6 months. This child had been hiding and surviving alone for 6 months. While he had been walking around like a ghost, this girl had been fighting to stay alive in the shadows of his ship. "Sophie," Jake said, softer this time. "We're not going to hurt you." Sophie's eyes moved from Jake to Ryan to the security officers. She was calculating, looking for a way out. There wasn't one. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said. "Stay where?" "In a cargo bay? On the ship, with them." She gestured vaguely, and Jake understood. She meant near where her parents had been. Near the last place she had seen them alive. Jake knelt down slowly, making himself less threatening. He noticed what she was holding now. A notebook. Brown leather, worn at the edges. Completely ordinary except for how tightly she gripped it. "Is that important to you?" he asked, pointing at the notebook. Sophie looked down at it. Her grip loosened just a little. "My mom gave it to me. Before she died. She said I should fill it with things worth remembering." Jake looked at the notebook. It appeared unused. The leather showed no wear from opening and closing. "Have you written anything in it?" "Some." Sophie shook her head. "I don't know what's worth remembering anymore." Those words hit Jake harder than any explosion or hull breach ever could. This child, who had lost everything, who had survived alone in the dark for half a year, couldn't find anything worth writing down. He understood that feeling. He lived it every day. "Come on," Jake said, standing up. "Let's get you to medical. Dr. Laura Chen will check you over. Then we'll figure out what to do next." Sophie stood slowly. She was small and looked fragile. But Jake saw strength in the way she held herself. She had survived. That took strength. Dr. Chen met them in the medical bay. She was a calm woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and steady hands. She took one look at Sophie and immediately softened her voice. "Hello, Sophie. I'm Dr. Chen. I knew your parents. They were good people." Sophie's face cracked just a little at those words, just enough to show the pain underneath. But she didn't cry. She just nodded. "I'm going to check your health, okay? Make sure you're not hurt or sick. Is that all right?" Sophie nodded again. Jake watched as Dr. Chen worked. She was gentle and patient, talking to Sophie about small things. The weather simulations in the gardens, the food in the cafeteria. Anything to make the girl feel safe. "She's malnourished but otherwise healthy, Doctor," Chen said quietly to Jake after the exam. "Remarkable, really. She must be incredibly resourceful to have survived this long on stolen rations and recycled water." "Where do we put her?" Jake asked. "We can't send her back to the cargo bay. There are spare crew quarters on Deck 5. I'll set up one for her. She should attend school with the other children too. She needs routine, structure. She needs to feel like she belongs somewhere." Jake agreed. He should have felt relief that the problem was solved. But as he left medical bay, he kept thinking about that blank notebook. About a girl so lost, she couldn't find anything worth remembering. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He never slept well anymore. But tonight was worse. He kept seeing Sophie's face, kept hearing her words. He got up and walked through the empty corridors to the observation deck. It was his habit. Every night at this hour, he came here and stared at the stars, searching for something he couldn't name. But when he arrived, he wasn't alone. Sophie sat on the floor near the viewing window, her notebook open on her lap. The pages were still blank. She looked up when he entered but didn't seem surprised to see him. Jake almost turned around. He came here to be alone, but something made him stay. He walked over and sat down a few feet away from her. They sat in silence, watching the stars move slowly past the window. "Do you come here every night?" Sophie finally asked. "Yes." "Why?" Jake thought about that. Nobody had asked him why in a long time. "I used to come here because it made me feel peaceful. Now I come because I don't know what else to do." Sophie nodded like she understood. "My mom said that's how you know you're really lost. When you keep doing things, but forget why they mattered." Jake looked at her. This strange, small girl who had survived impossible things, who carried a blank notebook like a treasure, who somehow saw right through him with a few simple words. Sophie started attending school the next morning. The ship had a small classroom for the 20 children who lived aboard with their families. Most were young, between 6 and 14 years old. They stared at Sophie when she walked in. Everyone had heard about the girl who lived in the cargo bay. The teacher, Mrs. Helen Grant, was kind but firm. She introduced Sophie to the class and assigned her a seat near the back. Sophie sat down and pulled out her notebook. She placed it on the desk but didn't open it. The other children whispered to each other, pointing at her when they thought she wasn't looking. At lunch, 3 girls approached Sophie's table. The oldest one, named Beth, smiled in a way that seemed friendly. "You can sit with us if you want," Beth said. "We don't bite." Sophie looked at them. They seemed nice enough, normal, everything Sophie wasn't anymore. "I'm okay here," she said quietly. "Come on, don't be weird. Everyone sits together." "I said I'm okay." Beth's smile faded. She shrugged and walked away with her friends. Sophie ate alone, the notebook sitting beside her tray like a silent companion. The days fell into a pattern. Sophie went to class. She did her work. She ate alone. She spoke only when spoken to. At night, she went to the observation deck and sat by the window. And every night, Commander Jake Morrison showed up a few minutes later. They didn't plan it. Neither of them said anything about meeting there. But it became their routine. Jake would enter, see Sophie sitting there, and take his usual spot. They would sit together in the darkness, watching the stars, saying little or nothing at all. 1 week after Sophie's discovery, Jake broke their usual silence. "You should try to make friends with the other kids." Sophie didn't look at him. "Why?" "Because you're young. You should have friends." "Should I?" Sophie turned to face him. "Should I pretend everything is normal? Should I laugh and play like nothing happened? Like my parents didn't die? Like I didn't spend 6 months eating scraps and hiding in the dark?" Jake had no answer for that. He understood too well. Everyone wanted him to move on too. To be the strong commander again. To act like 12 lives didn't weigh on his soul every single day. "No," he finally said. "You shouldn't pretend. But you shouldn't shut everyone out either." "Is that what you do?" Sophie asked. "You don't shut people out?" Jake almost smiled. "Almost. That's different. I'm the commander. So you get to be alone but I don't? I'm not alone. I have a whole ship full of people." Sophie looked back at the stars. "Having people around isn't the same as not being alone. You know that." She was right. Jake did know that. He was surrounded by people every day. His crew. His officers. All of them, looking to him for orders, for decisions, for leadership, but he felt more alone than he ever had in his life. "Your notebook is still blank," Jake said, changing the subject. Sophie touched the leather cover. "I know. Your mother wanted you to fill it. My mother is dead." Sophie's voice was flat. "She doesn't want anything anymore." "Loat." "Maybe. But she gave it to you for a reason." Sophie stood up suddenly. "You don't know anything about my mother. You don't know anything about me. Stop pretending you care." She walked away fast, leaving Jake alone in the observation deck. He sat there for a long time, feeling like he had made a mistake but not knowing what it was. Maybe trying to help was the mistake. Maybe some broken things couldn't be fixed. But the next night, Sophie came back. She sat in her usual spot and said nothing about the previous evening. Jake decided not to mention it either. They sat in silence like always. This time it was Sophie who broke the quiet. "Do you think about them? The people who died?" "Every day," Jake said. "Every single day." "Does it get easier?" "No, it just becomes normal. The pain becomes part of you. You learn to carry it." Sophie nodded slowly. "I dream about them. My parents. In my dreams, they're still alive. Then I wake up and remember they're gone. That's the worst part, having to lose them again every morning." "I know," Jake said softly. Because he did know. He dreamed about his lost crew members too. In his dreams, they were all still alive. The hull breach never happened. Everyone was safe. Then he woke up to reality. They sat together until Sophie fell asleep against the wall. Jake thought about waking her but decided against it. He took off his jacket and laid it over her, like a blanket. Then he left quietly, leaving her to sleep under the stars. Dr. Chen found him the next morning in his office. She looked concerned. "We need to talk about Sophie." Jake tensed. "What's wrong? Is she sick?" "No. Physically, she's fine. But emotionally, she's struggling. She won't connect with anyone. She sits alone. She doesn't participate in activities. I'm worried about her." "She talks to me," Jake said. "Sometimes." Dr. Chen raised an eyebrow. "She does? When?" "At night. In the observation deck. We both go there. We talk." "About what?" Jake shrugged. "Loss. Pain. Nothing important." "That is important, Jake. She's opening up to you. That's good. But she needs more than one person. She needs to feel like she belongs to a community, like she's part of something." "I'll try to encourage her," Jake promised. But encouraging Sophie turned out to be harder than expected. She resisted every attempt to include her in group activities. When other children invited her to play games, she refused. When teachers tried to put her in group projects, she found ways to work alone. 2 weeks passed. Jake noticed changes in himself. He started sleeping a little better. Not much, but a little. He found himself thinking about Sophie during the day, wondering if she ate lunch, if she did her homework, if she was okay. It was strange to care about someone again after months of feeling nothing. Then, one night, Sophie came to the observation deck with her notebook open. She had written something. Jake saw words on the page for the first time. "You wrote," he said. He tried not to sound too interested, but he was. Sophie looked at the page. "Just one thing. I wanted to see if I could. Can I read it?" She hesitated, then turned the notebook toward him. In neat handwriting, she had written, "Commander Jake looks at the stars like he's searching for something he lost." Jake read it twice. It was simple, true, and it saw right through him. "That's good," he said. "That's really good." "It's just an observation," Sophie said. "Nothing special. Sometimes, observations are the most important things." Sophie closed the notebook. "Why do you come here every night?" "Really?" Jake thought about lying, about giving her an easy answer, but she deserved the truth. "Because I feel guilty. Because 12 people died on my watch. Because I keep thinking if I had been faster, smarter, better, maybe they would still be alive. Including your parents." Sophie was quiet for a long moment. "You couldn't have saved them. The breach happened too fast. I read the reports. I broke into the command database and read everything." "You did what?" "I needed to know how they died. I needed to understand. Nobody would tell me. So I found out myself." Jake should have been angry about the security breach. But he wasn't. He understood the need to know. "What did you learn?" "That it wasn't your fault. That you saved everyone you could. That 30 people should have died, but you managed to save 18 of them. My parents weren't in a section you could reach. Nobody could have reached them in time." Jake felt something tight in his chest loosen just a little. He had read those same reports 100 times. He knew intellectually that he had done everything possible. But knowing something in your head and feeling it in your heart were different things. "Thank you for telling me that," he said. "I'm not saying it to make you feel better. I'm saying it because it's true." Sophie opened her notebook again and wrote something new. She didn't show him this time. They sat together until the ship's artificial night cycle ended and the corridors began to fill with early morning crew members. Jake walked Sophie back to her quarters. As she was about to go inside, she turned to him. "You're not as alone as you think you are," she said. The next morning, instead of reviewing reports alone in his office, he went to the engineering deck. The engineers looked up in surprise when he walked in. Commander Morrison rarely visited their section anymore. "Morning, Commander," said Kyle Martinez, the lead engineer. He was a broad-shouldered man with oil stains on his uniform and a friendly smile. "Something we can help you with?" "Just checking in," Jake said. "Wanted to see how things are running." Kyle exchanged glances with his team. "Everything's working fine, sir. We had a small coolant leak yesterday, but patched it up. Nothing serious." Jake noticed the tired lines around Kyle's eyes. "How many hours did that repair take?" "About 6. We wanted to make sure it was done right." "That was on your off shift, wasn't it?" Kyle shrugged. "Yeah, but it needed fixing. Couldn't leave it until morning." Jake realized he hadn't known about the leak. Hadn't known Kyle and his team had worked through the night to fix it. He had been so focused on his own pain that he stopped paying attention to what his crew did every day to keep the ship running. "Thank you," Jake said. "You and your team. Thank you for taking care of the Endeavor." Kyle looked surprised. "Just doing our job, sir." "No. You're doing more than that. And I appreciate it." Jake spent the rest of the morning visiting different sections of the ship. He talked to the botanists in the garden. He checked in with the navigation team. He stopped by the cafeteria during lunch and sat with crew members instead of eating alone in his office. People seemed shocked at first, but then they started talking to him. Really talking. Not just giving reports, but sharing stories, jokes, concerns. Ryan found him in the corridor later that afternoon. "Commander, is everything all right?" "Fine. Why?" You've been all over the ship today. People are wondering if something's wrong. Nothing's wrong. I'm just doing what I should have been doing all along. Connecting with my crew. Ryan smiled. It was the first real smile Jake had seen from his second-in-command in months. Good. It's good to have you back. Sir. That night, Sophie came to the observation deck with her notebook. She sat down and immediately started writing. Jake watched her from the corner of his eye. She seemed more focused than usual. You're writing a lot, he said. I'm making a list, Sophie replied without looking up. A list of what? Things I see? Things people do? I'm writing about your crew. Why? Sophie stopped writing and looked at him. Because someone should notice. Everyone on this ship is working hard, doing good things, but nobody sees it. You were the commander, and you stopped seeing. So I decided to see for you, to write it down. Can I read it? Sophie handed him the notebook. Jake read slowly. She had filled several pages now. She wrote about Kyle Martinez and how he hummed while he worked. About Dr. Chen and how she always remembered people's birthdays. About a botanist named Claire, who talked to her plants like they were her children. About a navigator who made paper birds and left them in random places for people to find. The observations were simple, but they painted a picture of a crew Jake had stopped seeing. Good people doing good things, taking care of each other, taking care of the ship, living their lives even after tragedy had struck them all. This is beautiful, Jake said. You're showing me my own crew, and I barely recognize them. That's because you stopped looking, Sophie said. You only saw the ones who died. You forgot about the ones who lived. Jake kept reading. Then he found an entry about himself. It said, the commander thinks nobody notices, but he checks the memorial wall every morning. He touches each name like he's making sure they're still remembered. He carries their weight, but I think it's crushing him. Someone should tell him it's okay, to let others help carry it. Jake read those words 3 times. His throat felt tight. His eyes burned. Sophie. You don't have to say anything, she said. I just wanted you to know someone sees you too. Jake closed the notebook carefully and handed it back. How did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I just pay attention. My mom taught me that. She said most people go through life not really seeing anything. They look, but they don't see. She told me to always see, to notice the small things, because the small things are usually the important things. Your mother was right. Sophie smiled a little. It was small and sad, but it was a real smile. She usually was. They sat together in comfortable silence. Jake felt something shifting inside him. Sophie's words kept echoing in his mind. He only saw the ones who died. He forgot about the ones who lived. It was true. 3/4. 4 still alive. End quote. The works? He had been so focused on his guilt over the 12 lost lives that he had forgotten about the 300 people still alive. Still depending on him. Still needing him to be their commander. The next morning, Jake called a crew assembly. Everyone gathered in the main hall, confused and concerned. Assemblies usually meant bad news. Jake stood before them and felt nervous. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt nervous. He had given hundreds of speeches as commander. But this one mattered more than any of them. I want to talk about something I should have talked about 6 months ago, he began. When the hull breach happened, we lost 12 people. 12 good people. I've been carrying the weight of those losses every day since then. I've let that weight crush me. I've let it turn me into someone who gives orders but doesn't lead. Someone who exists but doesn't live. The crew listened in silence. Jake could see concern on their faces. Confusion. But also, hope. I blamed myself for every death. I thought if I had been better, faster, smarter, they would still be alive. I carried that guilt like it was my responsibility alone. But a smart young person recently reminded me of something I forgot. She reminded me that I saved 18 people that day. That 30 people should have died, but only 12 did because of the quick actions of this crew. Jake saw Dr. Chen in the crowd. She was wiping her eyes. I forgot about the 300 people who lived. I forgot about all of you. I stopped seeing the good things you do every day. The ways you take care of each other. And this ship, I stopped being your commander and became a ghost. And I'm sorry for that. Someone in the back started clapping. Then another person. Then the whole room filled with applause. Jake felt his chest tighten again, but this time it was different. This time it was the good kind of pressure. From now on, things are going to change, Jake said when the applause died down. I'm going to be present. I'm going to lead. Not just give orders, but really lead. And I'm going to need your help. Because I can't carry everything alone. None of us can. We have to carry it together. Ryan stepped forward. Commander, I think I speak for everyone when I say, we've been waiting for this. We've wanted to help you. We've wanted to reach out, but you built walls and we didn't know how to break through them. I know, Jake said. And I'm asking you to forgive me for that. I'm asking for a chance to do better. Dr. Chen spoke up from the crowd. You don't need to ask, Jake. You already have it. The assembly ended with people coming up to shake Jake's hand, to tell him they understood, that they had been struggling too, that they were glad he was back. Jake talked to each person, really listened to them. And for the first time in months, he felt like he was actually the commander of this ship, instead of just wearing the title. Sophie watched from the back of the room. She didn't come forward. She just stood there, with her notebook, writing. When everyone had left, and Jake was alone in the hall, she approached him. That was brave, she said. I learned from you, Jake replied. You've been brave since the day I found you. I haven't been brave. I've been scared every single day. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing things even when you're terrified. You did that. You survived. You trusted me. You opened up. All while being scared. That's real bravery. Sophie looked at her notebook. I wrote something about today. Want to read it? She opened to the newest page and showed him. It said, Today, the commander showed everyone his heart. I think that's what real strength looks like. Not pretending you're okay when you're not. Not hiding your pain. But letting people see it and asking for help carrying it. Jake put a hand on Sophie's shoulder. Thank you. For everything. For being honest with me. For making me see what I was missing. You changed my life, Sophie Blake. You changed mine too, Sophie said quietly. You made me feel less alone. Over the next few weeks, the endeavor felt different. The crew seemed lighter. People smiled more. They talked more openly about their feelings, their fears, their grief over the lost crew members. Jake led by example, being honest about his struggles, while also being present for his people. The mission continued. They were getting close to making contact with the Viridian Coalition. Years of work were finally coming together. Amenline Remender. Amenaline. The first with a work. Amenaline. And Rhine. But Jake realized the mission success mattered less than the people on this ship. Without them, without their strength and dedication, none of it would be possible. Sophie's notebook filled with more and more entries. She wrote about the good things she saw every day. The small acts of kindness. The moments of beauty in the cold metal environment of the ship. She shared some entries with Jake. Others she kept private. But the important thing was, she was writing. She was seeing. She was living, instead of just surviving. One night, in the observation deck, Sophie made an noun. The endeavor had been running smoothly for 3 weeks. Jake felt more alive than he had in months. He visited every section of the ship regularly. He ate meals with his crew. He listened to their concerns and ideas. The ship felt less like a machine, and more like a home. Sophie had started sitting with other children at lunch. She didn't talk much at first, but she was there. Beth and 2 other girls named Emma and Lucy welcomed her into their group. They taught her card games and shared their snacks. Sophie even smiled sometimes, real smiles that reached her eyes. Her notebook was half full now. She showed Jake new entries every few nights in the observation deck. She had written about the navigator, who made paper birds, about the cook, who always saved extra dessert for the children, about Ryan Parker, and how he checked every system twice because he cared about keeping people safe. "You're documenting our humanity," Jake told her one night. "You're showing what makes us human, instead of just people floating through space." Sophie thought about that. What does make us human? Caring, hoping, refusing to give up, even when things are hard, helping each other. All the things you're writing about. Then why do some species in the galaxy think humans are weak? Sophie asked. I've been reading about the Viridian Coalition. They're stronger than us, more advanced. Why would they want to talk to us? Jake leaned back against the wall. Because strength isn't just about weapons or technology. It's about spirit, about determination. Humans have something that can't be measured in weapons or ships. We have the ability to hope even in the darkest times, to create meaning from nothing, to turn blank pages into stories. Sophie wrote that down in her notebook. Jake watched her write and felt grateful. Grateful for this strange, wise child who had stumbled into his life, who had reminded him what mattered. Then everything changed. 3 days later, the ship's alarm started blaring. Jake ran to the bridge. Ryan was already there, his face pale. "Commander, we've got a problem. A big one. There's a debris field ahead. Ancient battle wreckage from some war. It's massive, and we're heading right into it." Jake looked at the screens. The debris field stretched for thousands of kilometers. Pieces of destroyed ships, weapons, metal fragments, all floating in a deadly cloud. Can we go around it? Not without adding 6 weeks to our journey. We don't have the fuel for that. Then we go through. Slowly, carefully. The crew moved into position. Jake stood on the bridge, giving orders, watching the screens. The Endeavor entered the debris field like a fish swimming through broken glass. Navigation guided them around the larger pieces. Smaller fragments pinged off the shields. For an hour, everything went smoothly. Then the collision alarm screamed. A massive piece of wreckage, hidden by smaller debris, appeared directly in their path. The navigator tried to turn, but there wasn't enough time. The fragment hit the Endeavor on the starboard side. The impact threw everyone to the floor. Jake pulled himself up. Blood ran down his forehead from a cut above his eye. "Damage report." Ryan worked his console frantically. "Starboard engine is gone. Hull breaches on decks 4, 5, and 6. Emergency bulkheads sealing. Life support failing in multiple sections. Commander, we have people trapped." "How many?" "At least 30 crew members. Maybe more." The bulkheads sealed them in damaged sections. Jake's training took over. The fear, the memories of the last hull breach, all of it got pushed aside. His crew needed him. "Get rescue teams to every breach point. Kyle, I need you in engineering. Find me power. Find me life support. Find me anything." The next 6 hours were chaos. Jake coordinated rescue operations from the bridge, while teams worked to cut through bulkheads and reach trapped crew members. Kyle and his engineers performed miracles, rerouting power, patching holes, keeping critical systems running with spare parts and determination. Jake saved 23 people. 23 crew members pulled from damaged sections before life support failed. But 7 were lost. 7 people who died in the explosion, or in sections too damaged to reach in time. When the rescue operations ended, Jake stood in the corridor outside Medical Bay. His uniform was torn and bloody. His hands shook. Dr. Chen came out and found him there. "Jake," she said softly, "you did everything you could. You saved so many." "I lost 7, Jake said. His voice sounded hollow even to himself. 7 more names for the memorial wall. And 23 names still on the crew roster because of you. Because of your decisions. Your leadership. Don't forget them. While you mourn the others. Jake nodded but couldn't speak. He felt the old darkness creeping back. The guilt. The weight. 7 more people. 7 more failures. He walked through the ship in a daze. Crew members thanked him. Told him he was a hero. But he didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a commander who kept losing people. Jake found himself at the observation deck. He didn't remember deciding to go there. His feet just took him. Sophie wasn't there yet. He sat alone in the dark and put his head in his hands. When Sophie arrived 20 minutes later, she took one look at Jake and knew something was wrong. She sat down beside him. Closer than usual. "What happened?" she asked. "We hit debris. There was an explosion. I lost 7 people." Jake's voice cracked. 7 more, Sophie. When does it stop? When do I stop losing people? Sophie was quiet for a long time. Then she opened her notebook and turned to a page near the middle. "Read this," she said. Jake took the notebook. The entry was dated 2 weeks ago. It said, "Jake saved 23 people today. Not from an explosion or a disaster. Just from drowning in their own sadness. He talked to them. He listened. He cared. 23 people went to bed tonight feeling less alone because of him. That's a different kind of saving. But it matters just as much." Jake read it twice. "I don't understand. You save people every day," Sophie said. "Not just during emergencies. You save them by being present, by leading, by caring. Today, you saved 23 people from dying, but you've saved hundreds more from giving up. From losing hope, including me. But 7 died, Sophie. 7 people who trusted me to keep them safe. 7 people who knew the risks. Who chose to be here. Who lived good lives until the end because they were part of something bigger than themselves." Sophie took her notebook back and flipped to a blank page. "I'm going to write about them. About the 7 who died today. I'm going to make sure their stories are remembered. Will you help me?" Jake looked at this brave, impossible child. She had lost her parents. Had survived alone. Had every reason to be bitter and afraid. But instead, she chose to see the good. To remember what mattered. To fill blank pages with meaning. "Yes," Jake said. "I'll help you." They spent the next hour talking about the 7 lost crew members. Jake told Sophie their names, their jobs, their quirks, and habits. Sophie wrote it all down carefully. She wrote about Martinez, the engineer who sang old songs while he worked. About Donna Hayes, who collected rocks from every planet she visited. About Peter Cole, who was scared of heights, but loved looking at stars. When they finished, Sophie had filled 3 pages with memories. "Now they're not just names," she said. "They're people. Real people who mattered. Who will be remembered." Jake felt something inside him shift again. The grief was still there. The guilt. But alongside it was something else. Gratitude. Pride. Love for his crew. Both the living and the dead. "Thank you," he told Sophie. "I don't know what I would do without you." Jake called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. They gathered in the conference room looking exhausted and worried. The ship's status reports were displayed on screens around the room. Every number told the same story. They were in serious trouble. "Give me the facts," Jake said. "No sugarcoating. I need to know exactly where we stand." Kyle spoke first. "The starboard engine is completely destroyed. We can't fix it with what we have on board. We're down to 60% power. Life support is failing in 8 sections. We've sealed them off, but that means less space for the crew. We're overcrowded and running out of breathable air." Ryan added more bad news. "Navigation systems are damaged. We can't plot a safe course out of the debris field. One wrong move, and we hit something else. And we don't have the fuel to backtrack the way we came." Dr. Chen looked grim. Medical supplies are running low. We used most of them, treating the injured. If anyone else gets hurt, I can't help them properly. How long can we survive like this? Jake asked. Kyle did some calculations on his datapad. 4 days. Maybe 5, if we ration everything perfectly. After that, life support will fail completely. We'll run out of air. 4 days. Also, 4 days. The room fell silent. 4 days. 4 days. To figure out a solution, or everyone on the Endeavor would die. Slowly. Suffocating in a dead ship, floating through ancient wreckage. What about the escape pods? Someone asked. We have 12 pods, Ryan said. We have 300 people. Even if we used them all, most of the crew would be left behind. And the pods don't have enough range to reach anywhere safe. Everyone in the pods would die too. Just slower. Jake looked around the table at his officers. He saw fear in their eyes. But he also saw determination. They weren't giving up. Not yet. Ideas. I need ideas. Anything. Even if it sounds impossible. Kyle leaned forward. We could try to cannibalize the damaged sections. Pull parts from areas we've sealed off. Use them to repair critical systems. It would be dangerous work. The sections aren't stable, but it might buy us time. How much time? A day. Maybe 2 if we're lucky. Do it, Jake said. What else? A young engineer named Peter spoke up hesitantly. Commander, this might sound crazy, but what if we used the escape pod engines as temporary thrusters? They're small, but if we connected enough of them to the main engine system, we might generate enough power to get moving again. Kyle looked thoughtful. That could work. It would be tricky. We'd have to rewire the entire propulsion system, and it would only give us minimal thrust. But minimal is better than nothing. How long would that take? 2 days. If everything goes perfectly, which it probably won't. Jake nodded. I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. We could use the debris itself to guide us. Navigate by bouncing signals off the wreckage. It's never been done before. It might not work, but it's all I've got. Try it. Jake looked at each person. We have 4 days to do what should take weeks, maybe months. We need to work faster and smarter than we ever have before. We need to be creative, to think outside normal procedures. Can we do it? Right. Kyle grinned despite the situation. We're humans, Commander. Doing impossible things is kind of our specialty. The meeting ended, and everyone rushed to their tasks. Jake walked through the ship, checking on different teams. Everywhere he looked, he saw people working together. Engineers and scientists. Officers and civilians. Even the children helped by carrying tools and supplies. Sophie found Jake in engineering 3 hours later. She had her notebook and a determined look on her face. I want to help. You are helping, Jake said. You're staying safe. That's what I need from you. No. I mean really help. I'm small. I can fit into spaces adults can't reach. Let me help the repair teams. Kyle overheard and walked over. She's right, Commander. There are some access panels we can't reach because they're too narrow. We need someone smaller. The other kids are too young. Sophie's the perfect size. Jake didn't like it. The damaged sections were dangerous, but they needed every advantage they could get. Okay. But you stay with Kyle at all times. If he says get out, you get out immediately. Understood? Sophie nodded seriously. Understood. For the next 3 days, the Endeavor became a hive of desperate activity. Sophie crawled through tight spaces, retrieving parts and tools. Kyle's team worked around the clock, pulling components from damaged sections and using them to repair critical systems. Peter led the effort to connect escape pod engines to the main propulsion system. Ryan and his navigation team developed a new system for mapping the debris field. It worked better than anyone expected. They could see a path now. A narrow, dangerous path. But a path, nonetheless. Dr. Chen kept everyone healthy with increasingly creative solutions. When bandages ran out, she used spare cloth. When painkillers ran low, she taught meditation techniques. The medical bay became a place of comfort and hope even in the middle of crisis. Jake barely slept. He was everywhere at once, coordinating efforts, making decisions, encouraging his crew. Every hour he checked their progress. Every hour they were closer to a solution. But every hour they also used more air, more power, more resources. On the third night, Jake found Sophie sitting in a corridor outside engineering. She was covered in grease and dust. Her hands were scraped and bleeding. But she was writing in her notebook. Jake sat down beside her. "You should rest." "I'm too tired to sleep," Sophie said. She kept writing. Kyle worked 30 hours straight and refused to stop until the power coupling was fixed. Peter figured out a way to make the escape pod engines work, even though everyone said it was impossible. Ryan invented a completely new navigation system in 2 days. Jake watched her write. "Why is it so important to document this?" Sophie looked at him. "Because someday, other humans will need to know what we did here. They'll need to know that when things seemed hopeless, we didn't quit. We worked together. We found solutions. We survived. That's what humans do. That's our story." "Our story," Jake repeated. He liked the sound of that. Not his story or her story, but their story. The story of everyone on the Endeavor, working together to survive. On the fourth day, everything came together. Kyle's team finished the repairs. Peter's escape pod engine system was online. Ryan had mapped a course through the debris field. They were ready to try. Jake stood on the bridge with his senior staff. The entire crew watched on monitors throughout the ship. Everyone held their breath. "Start the engines," Jake ordered. Kyle activated the modified propulsion system. The ship shuddered. Warning lights flashed. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then, the engines caught. Power flowed through the systems. The Endeavor began to move. "We have thrust," Kyle shouted, minimal but steady. "We're moving." Ryan guided them carefully through the debris field using his new navigation system. Every few minutes, they had to adjust course to avoid wreckage. It took 6 hours of tense, careful flying. But slowly, surely. Finally, they cleared the debris field. The Endeavor limped into open space. The crew erupted in cheers. People hugged each other. Some cried. Jake felt his own eyes burning with tears he didn't try to hide. Ryan turned to Jake with a huge smile. "We did it, Commander. We actually did it." "You did it," Jake said. "All of you. This crew did something that shouldn't have been possible. You showed what humans can do when we work together." Sophie stood near the back of the bridge, writing furiously in her notebook. When she finished, she looked up at Jake and smiled. It was the biggest, brightest smile he had ever seen from her. But the celebration was short-lived. Kyle approached Jake with a worried expression. "Commander, we have a new problem. We're moving, but we're still running out of air. We bought ourselves time, but not enough. We need help. We need rescue. How far are we from the nearest outpost?" 3 weeks at our current speed. We have 2 days of air left." Jake's heart sank. They had survived the impossible. They had fixed their ship with spare parts and determination. They had navigated through a deadly debris field. And it still wasn't enough. They were going to die anyway, just slower and further from home. Ryan saw Jake's expression. "Commander, there is one option. We could try to contact the Viridian Coalition. We're in their space now. If they received our distress signal, they might send help." "Would they help us?" Jake asked. "We're an unknown species. They have no reason to risk their ships for us." 18 hours passed with no response. The air on the Endeavor grew thin and stale. People moved slowly to conserve oxygen. Some crew members had already passed out from lack of air. Dr. Chen kept them stable, but there was only so much she could do. Jake sat on the bridge, monitoring systems that continued to fail one by one. Sophie sat beside him, still writing in her notebook. Her movements were slow and tired. Everyone was tired. Running out of air felt like drowning in slow motion. "What are you writing now?" Jake asked. His voice sounded weak even to himself. Sophie showed him the page. It said, "Day 4, after the explosion. We might die today. But we tried everything. We didn't give up. If someone finds this notebook after we're gone, I want them to know that humanity fought until the very end. We were brave. We were strong. We were together." Jake read those words and felt something break open inside him. "We're not dead yet. Sophie, I know. I'm just preparing. My mom taught me to always be prepared. Your mom taught you well." They sat in silence for a while. Then the communication system crackled. Ryan jumped to attention. "Commander, we're receiving a signal. Someone's out there." Jake straightened up despite his exhaustion. "Can you identify it?" Ryan worked his console frantically. "It's not human. The signal pattern matches Viridian Coalition frequencies. Commander, they're responding to our distress call." The bridge exploded with activity. Everyone who could move rushed to their stations. Jake felt adrenaline push through his exhaustion. "What are they saying?" "Jake, they're asking for our exact position and the nature of our emergency. They want to know if we're hostile. Tell them our position. Tell them we're not hostile. Tell them we're dying and need immediate assistance." Ryan sent the response. Minutes crawled by. Every second felt like an hour. The air grew thinner. Jake's vision started to blur at the edges. Then Ryan shouted, "They're coming! A Viridian ship is changing course toward us. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. 6 hours. They had maybe 8 hours of air left. It would be close. Too close. But it was a chance." Jake stood and addressed his crew over the ship-wide communication system. "This is Commander Morrison. The Viridian Coalition has received our distress signal. Help is coming. We need to hold on for 6 more hours. I know we're all tired. I know we're scared. But 6 more hours. We can do this. Ration what air you have. Stay calm. Breathe slowly. We're going to make it." The crew responded with determination. They shut down non-essential systems to save power. They gathered in the areas with the best air quality. They took care of each other, sharing oxygen masks and helping those who were weakest. Sophie continued writing. She documented everything. How Kyle refused an oxygen mask so a younger engineer could use it. How Dr. Chen stayed awake, treating patients, even when she could barely stand. How children sang songs to stay calm, while adults held them close. 5 hours passed. Then 5.5. Jake watched the sensors, counting down the minutes until the Viridian ship arrived. His head pounded. His lungs burned. Around him, crew members were passing out. Even Ryan had collapsed at his station. Sophie's hand found Jake's. She squeezed it weakly. "Thank you for being my friend," she whispered. "You saved me when I was lost. I want you to know that. You saved me too," Jake said. His vision was darkening. "Your notebook. Your observations. You reminded me what it means to be human. You changed my life, Sophie." "I'm glad," Sophie said. Then her eyes closed, and she slumped against him. "Sophie." Jake shook her, but she didn't respond. He checked her pulse. Still alive, but barely. Around the bridge, everyone had passed out except him. He was the last one conscious. The last one, still fighting. Jake looked at the sensors. The Viridian ship was close now. So close. But would it be close enough? His own vision was fading. He couldn't breathe. His chest felt like it was being crushed. He slumped in his chair, still watching the sensors, willing the Viridian ship to move faster. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was the sensor showing a large ship approaching. Then, nothing. Jake woke up slowly. His head felt like it was full of cotton. His throat hurt. But he could breathe. Sweet, clean air filled his lungs. He opened his eyes and found himself in an unfamiliar room. White walls. Strange equipment. Medical monitors. Beeping steadily. A figure stood beside his bed. Tall, thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. A Viridian. The alien spoke in accented but clear English. "You are awake. This is good. You were very close to death." "My crew," Jake croaked. "Sophie. Where is Sophie?" "All crew members from your ship are safe." "We arrived in time." "Barely, but in time. The young female you call Sophie is in the next room. She is recovering well." Jake felt tears on his face. They made it. Everyone made it. "Thank you. Thank you for saving us." The Viridian tilted its head in what might have been a nod. "I am Ambassador Kale. I lead the coalition delegation for this sector. Your distress signal was most unusual. We debated whether to respond. First contact situations are delicate. But then we analyzed your ship's damage and realized what you had done. What we did? You repaired a ship that could not be repaired. You navigated through a debris field that destroys most vessels. You survived on minimal life support for days. By all calculations, you should have died. But you did not. You refused to die." Jake tried to sit up. Kale helped him. "We just did what we had to do. We didn't have a choice. There is always a choice. You could have surrendered, used your escape pods and died quickly rather than slowly. But you chose to fight, to hope, to believe in impossible solutions. That is very human. We are learning. You've been studying us? Since we received your distress signal. Yes. We accessed your ship's logs. We reviewed your repair efforts. And we found something very interesting." Kale held up Sophie's notebook. "A young crew member kept detailed records of your journey, of human behavior under stress. It is fascinating reading." Jake felt protective anger rise. "That's private. That belongs to Sophie. She gave it to us. She wanted us to read it. She said it would help us understand humanity better than any official report." Kale opened the notebook carefully. "She writes about small kindnesses, about hope in darkness, about people working together despite fear. She documents what makes your species unique." "What makes us unique?" Kale seemed to smile, though it was hard to tell with alien features. "You create meaning from chaos. You turn blank pages into stories. You refuse to accept defeat, even when logic says you should surrender. These qualities are rare in the galaxy. Most species are practical, efficient. They calculate odds and act rationally. Humans seem to ignore odds entirely. Is that a compliment or an insult? It is an observation. And an explanation for why the coalition voted to help you. We were impressed by your determination, by your creativity, by your stubborn refusal to die. The galaxy needs species like yours. Species that see impossible situations as challenges rather than endings." Over the next 3 days, the Viridian medical teams treated every crew member from the Endeavor. They repaired the ship with technology far beyond human capability. They provided supplies, fuel, and detailed maps of safe routes through their space. Jake was finally allowed to see Sophie on the second day. She was sitting up in bed, writing in a new notebook the Viridians had given her. Her old one was full. "You're awake," she said, her face lighting up with joy. Jake crossed the room and hugged her carefully. "I thought I lost you. I thought we all died. But we didn't. We made it." Sophie pulled back and showed him her new notebook. "The Viridians gave me this. Ambassador Kale said my observations helped them understand why they should help us. My notebook saved everyone. No, Sophie. You saved everyone. By reminding us what we were fighting for. By documenting our humanity. By filling blank pages with hope, Sophie smiled. We saved each other. That's what humans do. When the crew was healthy enough, Ambassador Kale gave them a tour of the Viridian station. It was massive and beautiful, built from materials that seemed to glow with inner light. Everywhere they went, Viridians stopped to stare at the humans. Some seemed curious. Others seemed wary. But all of them seemed interested. Kale led them to a large gathering hall where dozens of Viridian officials waited. Jake felt nervous. This was first contact. Everything humanity did here would shape how the galaxy saw them. Kyle addressed the assembly in the Viridian language, then switched to English. I present to you the crew of the human vessel Endeavor. They have traveled far to meet us. They have overcome impossible odds, and they bring a message about their species that I believe the Coalition should hear. Kyle gestured to Jake. All eyes turned to him. Jake stepped forward, suddenly aware of how small and fragile humans must seem to these tall, advanced beings. Members of the Coalition, Jake began. My species comes to you not as conquerors or beggars. We come as explorers, as seekers of knowledge and friendship. We know we're not the most advanced species in the galaxy. We know we have much to learn. But we have something to offer too. He paused and looked at his crew. At Sophie, standing near the front, clutching her notebook. At Kyle, and Ryan, and Dr. Chen, and all the others who had fought so hard to survive. We offer determination, creativity, the refusal to surrender even when surrender seems logical. We offer hope, because humans believe that blank pages are not empty. They're full of possibility, full of stories waiting to be written. We don't know what our story will be in this galaxy, but we know we want to write it together with you, as friends, as allies, as partners in exploring the unknown. The hall was silent. Then KL began to clap. It was a slow, steady rhythm. Other Viridians joined in. Soon the entire hall filled with the sound of approval. Kale stepped forward. The Coalition accepts humanity's offer of friendship. Your species has proven its worth through actions, not words. You will be welcomed as equals, as members of the galactic community, as friends. The crew erupted in cheers. Jake felt Ryan grab him in a hug. Dr. Chen was crying. Everyone was celebrating. They had done it. After 3 years of travel, after disasters and deaths and near impossible survival, they had made first contact. They had earned humanity's place among the stars. Sophie walked up to Jake quietly. She opened her notebook to the last page and showed him what she had written. It said, "This is the story of how humanity earned its place among the stars. Not through weapons or conquest, not through superior technology, but by being exactly who we are. Stubborn, creative, hopeful, brave. We turned blank pages into a story worth telling. And this is just the beginning." Jake read those words and smiled. "That's beautiful, Sophie. I learned from you," she said. "You taught me that blank pages aren't empty, that broken people can heal, that darkness doesn't last forever. You changed my life, Commander Jake Morrison. You changed mine too, Sophie Blake. You reminded me what it means to be human. You reminded all of us." They stood together in the hall, surrounded by celebrating crew and curious aliens, looking out at a future full of possibility. Two people who had been broken by loss, who had found each other in darkness, who had helped each other heal, and in doing so had helped their entire species take its first steps into a larger universe. The girl with the blank notebook and the commander who had forgotten how to hope. Together, they had written a story that would echo through the galaxy. A story about humanity's greatest strength. Not weapons or technology, but the simple, stubborn refusal to give up. The ability to find meaning in chaos. To create hope from despair. To turn blank pages into stories worth remembering. And as Sophie closed her filled notebook and opened a new one, ready to document whatever came next, both she and Jake knew one thing for certain. This was not the end of their story. It was only the beginning. It's our only chance. Jake thought about Sophie's notebook, about all the stories of human determination and hope she had documented, about how humans never gave up, even when things seemed hopeless. If they were going to die, they would die trying. Send the signal, Jake ordered. Tell them who we are. Tell them we need help. And tell them that humanity doesn't surrender. The signal went out into the black, carrying a message of hope into the unknown. Now, all they could do was wait and pray that someone was listening. You'd figure it out, Sophie said. You're stronger than you think, but I'm glad you don't have to do it alone. They sat together until the artificial dawn began to brighten the corridors. The ship was badly damaged. Life support was failing in multiple sections. The starboard engine was destroyed. They were stranded in the middle of a debris field with limited power and no way to call for help, but they were alive. And they were together. And somehow, that made everything feel possible. Jake stood up and offered Sophie his hand. She took it and stood beside him. Come on, he said. We have work to do. We have a ship to save and a crew to take care of. What about the mission? Sophie asked. What about the Viridian Coalition? Jake smiled. It was tired and sad, but it was real. We'll get there. Humans don't give up. We find a way. We always find a way. Sophie nodded and clutched her notebook. Then, let's go find it. They walked out of the observation deck together. A broken commander and a girl with a half-filled notebook, heading into an uncertain future with determination and hope. Cement. I think I want to try making friends. Jake looked at her in surprise. Really? Yeah. I mean, I'll still come here. This is our spot. But during the day, maybe I'll try talking to the other kids. Maybe I'll sit with them at lunch. I think that's a great idea. I'm scared, Sophie admitted. What if they don't like me? What if I don't fit in? Then, you'll deal with it. And you'll be okay. Because you're strong, Sophie. Stronger than you know. Sophie nodded. She wrote something in her notebook and closed it. Thanks, Jake. It was the first time she had called him by his first name instead of his rank. They sat together under the stars, two broken people who had found each other in the darkness, who had helped each other start to heal. The empty commander was filling with life again, and the ship sailed on through the endless black, carrying its crew toward whatever future waited among the stars. Don't blame you. They respect you. They want to help you. But you won't let them. It's complicated, Jake said. No, it's not. It's simple. You're scared, just like me. Jake stood in the corridor for a long time. A 14-year-old girl had just seen through every wall he had built around himself. She was right. He was scared. Scared of getting close to people again. Scared of caring. Scared of losing more people he cared about. But Sophie was scared too. And she had still written in her notebook. She had still opened up to him. If she could be brave, maybe he could too. Jake walked to the bridge with a new purpose forming in his mind. He had been a ghost for 6 months. A commander who gave orders but never connected. Maybe it was time to change that. Maybe it was time to remember what it meant to be human instead of just being a rank and a title. The blank notebook was starting to fill with words. Maybe it was time for Jake to start filling the blank spaces in his own life too. Your mother sounds like she was wise, he said. She was. Sophie closed the notebook and held it against her chest again. I wish I could remember more about her. Every day, I forget a little more. Her voice. The way she smiled. Soon there won't be anything left. That's what the notebook is for, Jake said. To keep the important things from disappearing. Sophie looked down at the blank pages. I can't write about her. It hurts too much. And I can't write about anything else, because nothing else seems important enough. They sat together in silence after that. Two people broken by the same tragedy, sitting in the dark, searching for reasons to keep going. Neither of them had answers. But somehow, sitting together felt less empty than sitting alone. When Sophie finally got up to leave, Jake stayed behind. He watched her walk away, clutching her notebook, and felt something he hadn't felt in months. Not hope exactly. Not yet. But maybe the memory of what hope used to feel like. That was something. That was a start.